Glittering chandeliers flickered above the glass pavilion as guests stood frozen, the music choking to a stop mid-note. In the center aisle, a man in a faded gardener's cap slowly straightened, flecks of soil clinging to his sleeves. He reached up, removed the cap, and the room inhaled as one. "Chief Adewale Johnson?" someone whispered. The billionaire's face, recognized from business magazines and charity galas, was calm and carved in stone. His eyes moved from his son Malik to the bride-to-be, Serena Price, who still held a bouquet like a trophy. A smear of dirt streaked the hem of her mist-white dress where it had brushed the gardener's, his pant leg moments before. Serena's smile thinned. "What is this?" Chief Adewale's voice was steady. "This is the truth, my dear. I pretended to be a poorhouse gardener for 4 weeks. You failed the test." The words hung heavy as a storm. A murmur rippled across the guests. The staff, the driver Kojo, the housekeeper Maya, the chef Aaliyah, stood near the back, eyes wide, back straight, like witnesses summoned to court. Malik's jaw tightened. "Dad, not now." "Now," the chief said. "Because last night you told a man you believed to be beneath you, you're nothing. Even your sweat smells poor. Because you pushed Maya for not moving fast enough with your shoes. Because you threatened to fire Kojo for stopping at a red light." Someone gasped. Serena's bridesmaids shifted, earrings trembling. Serena lifted her chin. "You inconvenienced me. That's all. This masquerade is cruel." "Cruelty," the chief replied, "is stepping on people you haven't learned to see." Serena blinked once, then twice. When she spoke, her voice dripped sugar. "Call off the show, chief. You don't want the press to hear you stalked me in your own house." The chief's gaze did not move. "There will be no wedding." A sharp cry cracked the air. Auntie Renee, Serena's aunt, pressed a hand to her mouth. The orchestra leader quietly set his violin down. Outside, thunder rolled like a judge clearing his throat. Serena's fingers tightened on the bouquet. But instead of breaking, she smiled. It was a small, careful smile, the kind that hides knives. "Are you sure you want to do that, sir?" "Absolutely sure." Before anyone could answer, lightning flashed and the lights blinked. The room drew tight around that smile. Then, cut. 2 months earlier, the Johnson estate was still soft with early summer. The big house sat at the edge of Atlanta like a quiet king, broad verandas, hibiscus lining the walk, fountains that fell like laughter. The Johnsons were old-school generous. Scholarships, hospitals, a youth center on Auburn Avenue. Chief Adewale hailed from Lagos by way of Houston, but his spirit traveled back and forth every day, Yoruba proverbs in one pocket, American hustle in the other. His son Malik carried both without trying. A boy with warm eyes who built an app to keep small businesses honest and a habit of writing thank-you notes to drivers who brought him home safe. He met Serena at a charity dinner. She arrived in bronze silk and a story about teaching girls in West End to code. She listened with her whole face, nodded at the right places and laughed at jokes before anyone else. If charm were a staircase, Serena had learned every step. "Dad," Malik had said later, "she gets the mission." The chief studied the way Malik's voice softened on the word she. He hid his worry. He remembered what money can buy, room temperature water in a cool glass, doors that whisper open, but also knew what it cannot buy, a heart that bows before it breaks. "You'll bring her to the house," he said lightly. "Let her meet everyone." Everyone meant the family and the staff. In that house, staff were family. Maya, who had first come at 19 to help in the kitchen and had stayed to see birthdays and graduations. Kojo, whose careful hands guided the cars like he was moving something sacred. Aaliyah, who seasoned food with memory, every pot a story from her grandmother's porch in Savannah. Serena walked in with perfect posture and air kissed the air. She praised the decor. She asked the right questions. She thanked Aaliyah for the jollof and asked for seconds, laughing that Spice loved her more than she loved it. She called Maya darling, which made Maya smile, then flinch when Serena didn't look at her as she spoke. "Son," the chief said to Malik that night, "light can be bright and still be far away." Malik laughed. "You and your proverbs." "Proverbs are seeds," the chief said softly. "They grow when you're not looking." He slept little. The next morning he dressed himself like a man he once knew in Lagos, when he was 17 and still learning which plants survive drought. He wore faded denim and a shirt with a missing button. He put on a cap, bent his shoulders and walked the long way to the back gate. "Mr. Ade?" Kojo squinted. Then he saw the eyes and straightened. "Ah." "Not a word," the chief said. "Watch. Help me carry the truth." So the gardener arrived. He worked sunrise to noon, body bowed, hands full of mulch, smile patient. He weeded rose beds and trimmed hibiscus, humming low. He let a little dirt stay under his nails. He greeted everyone. "Good morning, madam," he would say to Serena, eyes low, and Serena would nod without seeing him. At first, her coolness could have been simple distraction. 2 weeks in, cool turned cold. She checked the time while Maya spoke. She tapped her foot when Aaliyah described the pepper soup. She posted photos on social media with long captions about family, never once tagging the people who cooked and cleaned and kept the house breathing. Small things bloomed into sharp ones. One Tuesday, rain moved over the lawn like a gray shawl. Mr. Ade, the chief, dragged sacks of soil across the path, shoes muddy, shoulders aching in purposeful ways. Serena stepped outside to take a call. When she finished, she turned and nearly slipped. The chief rushed forward. "Careful, madam," he murmured, steadying her elbow. She pulled away as if the touch burned. "Do not touch me." "Sorry, madam," he said, voice low. She shook her hand like she could flick off the moment. "If you keep making this place messy, I'll have Mr. Johnson hire real staff." Kojo, standing under the carport, glanced at the chief, then at the puddle. The chief nodded once. "Keep watching." Another day, Maya arrived late, eyes red. Her little boy had an asthma attack. "I'm sorry," she told Serena. "Traffic." "I don't pay for excuses," Serena said. She pressed a heel against the bottom stair. "You're lucky I'm not the type to deduct pay." Maya stood smaller than she was. The chief felt something old and angry rise like thunder in his chest. But he swallowed it. A test must run its length. Truth must reach the last curve. The worst came on a Saturday, the morning of the cake tasting. The house smelled like vanilla and new promises. Aaliyah set out plates, neat and careful. Kojo shined the car until it winked at the sun. The chief raked the side bed, close enough to hear the kitchen radio sing. Serena swept in with 2 friends, Keisha and Bella, laughter spilling like sweet soda. "We need to move fast," Serena said. "I have a media interview at 4. They want the soft girl look but strong, you know?" She walked through the kitchen, sniffed and put down her phone. "Is this the cake?" "It's leaning." "Aaliyah, fix it. And where are my white slippers?" "Maya." Maya hurried in, hair tied in a scarf, breath short. "I put them by the... They're not there." Serena pointed toward the pantry. "Look with both eyes. I can't keep holding everyone's hands." Maya slipped past and bumped a stack of plates. One slid, wobbled, and crashed. The sound cracked the air. Aaliyah's hand flew to her chest. Kojo turned from the hallway. The chief dropped the rake. Serena's face hardened. "Are you kidding me?" she said. "Are you?" She turned on Maya, and her voice sharpened into something sharp enough to cut. "Do you even know how to move in a house like this? Or do you only know how to break what you can't buy?" Maya's eyes filled, but she steadied herself. "I'm sorry, ma'am." Serena stepped closer. "You've been sorry all week." "Madam," the chief said from the doorway, cap low. "Please." "It was an accident." Serena spun. She looked him up and down, took in the dirt, the old shirt, the grateful quiet he wore like a second skin. Something cold flashed across her face. "Stay in your lane," she said. "Garden. Don't speak where grown folks are talking." The room grew so quiet the air listened. Even the clock softened its tick. Aaliyah set down a plate. "Miss Serena," she said gently, "we're all..." "Enough," Serena snapped. She pointed at the chief's shoes. "Mud. Everywhere. Clean it. Now." The chief did not move. The space in his chest where tenderness lived tightened, but his face stayed still. He bent slowly and took a cloth. He knelt to the floor. Kojo's jaw clenched. He took out his phone. His thumb hovered, then pressed. The tiny red light in the corner blinked alive. Serena saw it. Her lips curled. "You recording me, driver?" Kojo swallowed. "No, madam." "You people," she said. "Always forgetting who signs the checks." Malik's voice drifted from the foyer. "Babe? You ready for the interview?" Serena's spine straightened. She smoothed her dress so fast the fabric shivered, then turned, smile stitched back to life. "Yes, baby. Just a small mix-up." Malik stepped in. He took in the plates, the cloth in the gardener's hand, Maya's eyes. He crossed to Maya first. "You okay?" Serena looped her arm through his. "She's fine. She just broke a plate. We'll take care of it." The chief kept his eyes low. He had asked God for patience and been given a yard of it. He needed all of it now. "Dad's upstairs," Malik said to Serena. "He wants to see the style board." "Of course," Serena said sweetly. She lifted her chin at the chief. "Make sure the floor shines by the time we get back." Malik kissed her cheek and missed the way Maya flinched. The moment they left, the kitchen breathed out. Maya knelt to help the chief. He touched her wrist gently. "No," he whispered. "Go drink water." Aaliyah exhaled. "Sir." "Shoo." The chief's eyes were calm, but his voice had iron in it. "We gather at 3. By the hibiscus. Bring your truth." He stood slowly. Kojo nodded, grief and pride fighting behind his eyes. Maya wiped her cheeks, shoulders slowly rising. Storm clouds were building in the west. And now, back in the glass pavilion, with the whole city's eyes waiting to read the Johnsons' faces, Chief Adewale stood without his cap, owning his name. He watched Serena's careful smile and remembered every small cut she'd made across the week, every time she sliced dignity from someone and called it efficiency. He remembered the text he sent the staff. "It ends today." He looked at his son. "There will be no wedding," he repeated. Silence pressed the room flat. Auntie Renee reached for Serena's hand. Serena did not squeeze back. She only kept smiling that quiet, dangerous smile. "Are you absolutely sure?" Serena asked again, softer now, sweeter. "Because if this is your final answer, Chief, then it's my turn." She lifted her eyes to the balcony where a shadow moved. Every head turned upward. A phone camera faced down from the rail, its red light blinking, already recording. The shadow stepped forward, someone the family knew, someone who should not be up there at all. And the room realized that the gardener's test had uncovered more than one truth. 2 weeks before the wedding, the estate moved like a hive. Trucks brought flowers and fabric. Planners whispered over seating charts like they were holding maps to buried treasure. Photographers scouted angles. The fountain, the oak trees, the long driveway where the rolls would glide. The story the world expected was simple. Billionaire family, beautiful bride, polished joy, no questions asked. Inside that smooth picture, smaller stories scraped for air. When Chief Adewale first shared his plan with the security chief, Jamal Carter, the man raised a brow. Jamal was a quiet veteran from Savannah with patient hands and a pastor's steady eyes. "You sure you want to go this route, sir?" "I am," the chief said. "Wealth disguises a person. Poverty reveals them. I want to see who she is when she thinks no one important is looking." Jamal scratched the edge of his notebook. "We keep it clean. No traps. Only truth." "Only truth," the chief agreed. "And, Jamal, protect my son. If I'm wrong, I'll apologize for being old and suspicious. If I'm right," he didn't finish the sentence. So the gardener kept coming. The staff learned to call him Mr. Ade, a private joke folded around his real name. The first days, Serena was glossy and cautious. She moved like a woman who'd studied photos of elegance and memorized every angle. She smiled for long stretches when Malik watched, then exhaled when he turned away as if kindness cost. There were moments that could have been explained away. She corrected Maya's arrangement of napkins. More hotel, less family reunion. She asked Kojo to park like a European, which made Kojo smile privately and park exactly as he always did. Safest way forward, safest way back. She told Aaliyah the stew needed less story and more salt. In each scene, her voice was not loud, her words not wild. But they cut. One afternoon, a group from the Johnson Youth Center arrived for a quick tour. 2 girls and a boy in khaki uniforms, eyes wide, shoes scuffed, sweat drying to salt on their foreheads. Malik loved those visits. He took the kids through the tech lab he'd set up in the pool house, let them touch 3D printers and ask big questions. He was all light with them. "You can do this," he said easily, as if the future were a door he could just hold open. Serena posed with the kids for a photo, then stepped aside and wiped her hand on a silk skirt when she thought no one was looking. Mr. Ade was looking. He felt the wrinkle in his heart deepen. Later that day, Malik and Serena walked the rose path holding hands. The gardener kept his eyes down and trimmed quietly, close enough to hear the edge in their voices. "I promised the youth director I'd stop by next week," Malik said. "They're unveiling the reading corner. I dedicated it to Mom." Serena's laugh was a bright bell. "Baby, we can send flowers. We're slammed with fittings. Also, the media wants a couples interview and they schedule months out. We can't disappoint them. Community comes before cameras," he said, gentle but firm. "That's sweet," she said, kissing his cheek, "but cameras help community. Don't be sentimental." Malik didn't argue, but the gardener could see the thought stay behind his eyes like a cloud refusing to move. Word traveled quietly among the workers from the construction site at the new Johnson Center wing. The site manager, Uncle Ben from Decatur, kept a small crew that came to the house to install a custom stage and lights for vows. When Serena visited to give creative guidance, She snapped her fingers for changes without standing still long enough to learn anyone's name. A young carpenter named Zanil, South African dad, Georgia mom, laid out panels without complaint while Serena pointed and frowned. "These corners feel cheap," Serena said. "Do you all only know how to do basic?" Zanil nodded politely. "We can do it cleaner, ma'am." Serena turned to her friend Bella. "Influencers' weddings look better than this. Why do people always deliver their cheapest work when rich folks hire them? It's like they assume we won't notice." Mr. Ade heard it all while measuring irrigation flow, pencil behind his ear, eyes steady on a pipe that did not need measuring. He felt heat move up his neck. He whispered to himself, "Empty drums make the loudest sound." The next day, Jamal showed the chief a small clip on his tablet. Serena telling Kojo to park like a European, Serena's comment about cheap corners, Serena's face when a child hugged her too long. "It's not one big sin," Jamal said. "It's 100 small ones." "Small stones build a road," the chief murmured. "Where does hers lead?" Malik saw parts of it. He wasn't blind. When he raised a concern, Serena countered with sugar and logic. "You know I'm under pressure. This is new. I'm learning. Teach me. Isn't love patient? Aren't you Mr. Patient?" She'd lean into him and let silence do the rest. It is hard to fight someone you want to protect. And yet, there were times when the mask slipped even in front of him. They were touring the ballroom when a sound tech, Rafiq, asked for a few more minutes to tune the mics. "We want the vows to ring clear," he said. "The shape of the room is stealing your S's." Serena smiled at Malik. "Do you hear this poetry?" Then low to Rafiq, "We hired you to fix it, not to write romance about air. 10 minutes, no more." Rafiq bowed his head and returned to the board. Malik watched Serena. Something hurt beneath his ribs, then floated away before he could name it. On Friday, Auntie Renee came by in a blue suit and perfume like memories. She hugged Malik with both arms and held on. "You're my boy," she said. "You're your father's boy. Keep your ears open to the ground." She and Serena sat on the veranda with tall glasses of Zobo. Renee spoke about family, pressure, how fame bites. Serena listened, lips pressed like she was holding in the right answers. "I want to be a good daughter-in-law," she said at last, voice soft. "I want to be good to people." Renee smiled kindly. "Then be good when no one is looking." That night, the chief stood alone at the edge of the lawn. Fireflies blinked like tiny lanterns. He thought of Lagos, his mother selling peppers at the market, the way she'd greet every customer the same whether they looked rich or tired. "Your face is not a mirror," she used to say. "Don't wait to see yourself in others before you act right." He had given his son everything money could buy and tried to guard the things money could not. He had watched the staff grow families under his roof, watched children learn their names from people who kept their futures safe. He could not, would not, bless a marriage that would make the house breathe badly. 3 days before the wedding, Kojo drove Serena and her friend Keisha to a downtown boutique. Traffic tightened around them like a fist. At a choke point under the overpass, a homeless man tapped the window with 2 fingers, the ask not in his face but in the way his shoulders leaned. Kojo glanced at the rear view. Serena rolled her eyes. She lowered the window only a crack and slid $1 out with 2 fingers as if feeding a vending machine. "Don't scratch the car," she said and flicked her nails dry. "Madam, you no even fit look am?" Kojo's thought did not reach his mouth. He said only, "Seatbelt please." At the boutique, Serena returned 10 dresses without a thank you, then took a selfie with the clerk. "We love small businesses," the caption later read, never once asking the clerk's name. Kojo waited by the curb, reading Psalms in a quiet voice. When Serena came out, her smile fetched the sun back. "Thank you, Kojo," she said, and the car swallowed them whole. He drove like a man carrying a glass bowl full of water. On the last night before the vows, the staff met by the hibiscus at 3 o'clock as the chief had asked. The blooms glowed red, heavy with rain. Maya spoke first. She didn't bring every moment, only the ones that still stung. Aaliyah, hands folded, described how Serena talked to ovens like they were brighter than people. Zanil looked at the ground and said, "It's not that she wants excellence. We all want excellence. It's that she wants conquest." Kojo finally lifted his eyes. "If this is the woman that will be our madam, we will survive," he said. "We always do. But the home will become a place where people breathe only when they are alone." The chief listened without interrupting, wind touching his sleeves. Then he nodded once. "Tomorrow," he said, "we tell the truth in the open. Respectfully. Completely." "Sir," Jamal added, "there's more. I discovered something else." He hesitated, choosing words. There may be a video. It's not flattering. It's not the staff's. Someone outside the house. The chief's jaw set. Whose? I'm checking, Jamal said. But it's scheduled to drop right after the vows. A channel that loves other people's pain. Find it, the chief said. Find who fed it. By dawn, the city felt like a held breath. The glass pavilion rose on the lawn like a crystal boat. Buttercream and white roses softened every corner. Guests arrived in suits the color of new roads. Aunties arrived in dresses that sang. The Johnson name pulled famous faces and ordinary neighbors alike, all eager to bless or to witness. Serena was a study in gold and milk, every hair pinned like a promise. She took pictures with grace and then turned between frames to exhale the way she always did, with a tight face, like kindness was a dress she would remove at home. Malik's tie shook when he tied it. He hugged the chief and the chief held him a second longer than usual. Baba, Malik joked, you trying to break my ribs? If they break they will grow back different, the chief said, smiling. Strong in the right places. Music lifted and rested like waves. The aisle shone. The staff stood near the back, dressed in their Sunday clothes. Kojo in an ironed shirt, Maya in a simple blue dress, Aaliyah in Ankara with a head wrap that looked like a sunrise. Zanil arrived straight from the site, hands scrubbed clean. Jamal stood at the edge of the room, not blinking. The gardener stepped into the open. And now the world saw who he was. The cap came off like a page torn from a story. Chief Adewale Johnson stood in his full height, and names began to whisper across the room like wind in tall grass. Serena's smile thinned. The chief spoke. Words about a test. Words about cruelty, and the price of stepping on people you refuse to see. Serena's smile turned careful. She played her last card. Public pressure, reputation, the hush money of embarrassment. Are you sure? She asked. Lightning rolled. The room's heart stalled. Then Serena's eyes slid to the balcony, and a shadow stepped into light. Phones lifted. Necks craned. The person on the balcony wasn't a stranger at all. It was Keisha, Serena's closest friend, holding up a phone with a red recording light. And beside her, pale with regret, stood Rafiq from Sound, the same man Serena had dressed down, wearing a headset and a look that said he had just learned a new meaning of the word trap. Ladies and gentlemen, Keisha called down, voice bright and sharp like glass. If the wedding is cancelled, maybe you'll still want a show. Because I have a video the world is going to love. She turned the phone toward the guests, thumb hovering over, go live. And in that instant, Malik realized the video wasn't only about Serena's cruelty. It was about him. The murmur in the glass pavilion swelled like the start of a storm. Guests leaned forward in their seats, their faces caught between curiosity and dread. The strings of fairy lights hanging above flickered faintly, like the building itself was holding its breath. Keisha, what is this? Serena's voice cracked, her composure slipping for the first time. Keisha didn't blink. Her gold earrings swung as she raised the phone higher. Since everyone loves a love story, let's give them the real one. Malik stepped forward, his voice low and tight. Keisha, turn that off. But it was too late. She pressed play. The phone screen brightened, the speakers of Rafiq's setup caught the sound, and suddenly Serena's laughter filled the room, the sharp, mocking laughter of someone certain no one else was listening. You think I'm here for him? Her voice said. Please. I'm marrying a legacy, not a man. In 3 years I'll have my own foundation, my own company, and my own name, Serena Johnson. Then he can go back to his charity games. Gasps sliced the air. Someone dropped a glass. Malik's eyes froze on the screen, the light washing color from his face. The next voice in the video wasn't Serena's, it was Malik's, softer, almost pleading. Serena, why do you treat the staff like this? They're family to me. And Serena's answer hit harder than the first. Because they act like family, not employees. When you give people too much comfort, they forget who pays them. Someone has to keep order. The crowd erupted, whispers, side glances, phones raised. Auntie Renee's hand went to her chest. Even the orchestra members lowered their bows. Serena spun toward Keisha, her face a mask of fury. You recorded me? Keisha's voice trembled. You called me your sister, Serena. You said you wanted me to help you become better. But every time I tried, you told me to stop being dramatic. You told me kindness is for the broke. The chief didn't move. He stood still, hands folded behind his back, his silence louder than shouting. His gaze stayed on Malik, who hadn't said a word. Malik, Serena began, her tone slipping into desperation. I was angry that day. You know I didn't mean it like that. You know I love you. Malik's jaw tightened. His voice was steady but cold. Love doesn't look like humiliation, Serena. It doesn't sound like greed. Serena turned, searching the crowd for a single sympathetic face. You all don't know me. This is edited, this is. But Rafik, pale with guilt, stepped forward. It's not edited. I'm sorry, Miss Serena. You asked me to keep it, to leak it to the blogs after the ceremony. Rafik, she screamed. You promised? He flinched. I couldn't do it. Not after seeing how people treated you here, how you treated them. The chief finally spoke. You built your house on deception, Serena. But when the storm came, the walls told the truth. Serena's bouquet slipped from her fingers, hitting the marble floor with a soft, final thud. Security, the chief said quietly, escort her out. Jamal moved forward with 2 guards, not rough but firm. Serena's eyes darted from face to face, searching for help. Malik turned away. The crowd parted as she walked out, her dress dragging white across the tiles, her dream dissolving behind her. The silence she left behind was thick, electric. No one knew whether to clap or pray. The chief looked at the guests, his voice deep and calm. This was never meant to embarrass anyone. It was meant to reveal what kind of heart we were bringing into this home. He turned to his son. Malik, I'm sorry you had to see it this way. Malik took a long breath. His eyes were glassy but firm. You were right to test her, Dad. I just wish I had listened sooner. The chief placed a hand on his shoulder. Pain is a teacher that never forgets its lessons. Kojo, Maya, Aaliyah, and Zanil watched quietly from the back. Maya's eyes glistened. Aaliyah whispered, the earth always knows when rain is coming. Outside, the thunder rolled again, and for the first time that day it felt cleansing. Hours later, after the guests had left and the staff had begun to clear the remains of the wedding that never was, Malik sat by the edge of the fountain. The roses still smelled like celebration, but the music was gone. The chief joined him with 2 cups of zobo, set one down beside him, and sat. I thought I loved her, Dad, Malik said quietly. Maybe I loved the idea of her more. The chief nodded. That's the thing about light, it can blind you before it shows you the way. Malik looked at the house. What happens now? Now we rest, the chief said. Then we thank the ones who saw what we didn't. At that moment, Maya walked by carrying a tray of untouched cake slices. The chief called her gently. Maya, keep one for me and one for him. The day may have turned bitter, but there's still sweetness in honesty. She smiled faintly. Yes, sir. Malik looked at her, then at the others working quietly, realizing just how much of his life these people had built. They stood by us, he said. Even when we didn't see it. They always have, the chief replied. Because dignity doesn't come from money. It comes from how you treat the people who can do nothing for you. The fountain bubbled softly between them, and Malik felt something shift, respect, not just for his father but for the life he'd built on truth. Night settled over the estate. The fairy lights still glowed faintly on the pavilion, where chairs now stood empty and petals littered the floor. Aaliyah hummed as she packed dishes. Kojo locked the gates. Upstairs, the chief looked out over the quiet lawns. His reflection stared back from the window, older, wiser, unashamed. Test passed, he whispered. Downstairs, Malik's phone buzzed. It was a text from an unknown number. You think the wedding's over? The world has already seen the video. Check your social feed. He frowned, opened the app, and froze. The clip had leaked online, not just of Serena's cruelty but the whole recording. The chief in disguise, the staff whispering, the confrontation, every raw word. The caption under the viral post read, Billionaire family humiliates woman in front of 300 guests. Shocking footage. Comments poured in. Why would a father spy on his son's fiancée? This is toxic rich people drama. She was wrong, but this test was cruel. Respect to the staff though, they stayed classy. Malik's hands tightened around the phone. Dad, he called out, rushing up the stairs. You need to see this. The chief turned slowly, the glow from the screen lighting both their faces. Outside, car engines roared, paparazzi arriving, hungry for a scandal. The test had ended, but the real war had just begun. The estate that once gleamed like peace now buzzed like a hornet's nest. Outside the gates, camera flashes burst like lightning, their shouts piercing the night. Chief Johnson. Did you fake being a gardener? Is it true you humiliated your son's fiancée? Malik, are you suing your father? Security struggled to push reporters back, but the story had already exploded beyond their walls. In less than 3 hours, the video had crossed 1 million views. It wasn't just on gossip blogs, even business news sites picked it up. Headlines screamed, Billionaire's morality test goes wrong. Father and son at war after public exposure. The House of Johnson, scandal in the garden. Inside the mansion, Chief Adewale stood before the massive television in the living room, watching his own face replayed in clips. The sight of himself kneeling with a cloth to clean the floor. His disguise, his test, was being twisted by commentators who knew nothing about honor or lessons. Manipulative, one pundit called it. Cruel, another said. And a third added, that woman might be heartless, but this man staged humiliation as a game. Kojo turned off the TV quickly. Sir, please don't let this thing enter your heart. The world only sees the show, not the truth behind it. The chief gave a small, tired smile. The world often mistakes wisdom for wickedness. I'm not angry, Kojo. I am only sad that we have traded listening for shouting. Aaliyah came in from the kitchen holding a tray of tea and groundnut biscuits. Sir, eat something. This night will be long. The chief took the cup. Thank you, my daughter. Tell the others to stay home tomorrow. They have already been through enough. Aaliyah shook her head. No, sir. We stand with you. This house is our own too. Meanwhile upstairs, Malik paced his room. His phone wouldn't stop buzzing, calls from journalists, old college friends, even a few investors. Each message burned the same question into his mind. Did your father go too far? He stared at his reflection in the window, the lights from outside flashing red and white across his face. The man staring back at him looked uncertain, split between loyalty and outrage. His phone buzzed again. This time it was a message from Serena. Serena, I told you it would come back to haunt you. You let him humiliate me. The world will know the truth now. I'm not done. Malik's hands trembled. He typed back then deleted it. He didn't even know what truth she thought she was protecting. Another message arrived moments later. Serena, I have interviews lined up. I'll tell everyone how you and your father set me up. You'll regret this. He clenched his fists trying to stay calm. But his heart beat fast with anger and shame. Downstairs, Jamal walked in briskly holding a tablet. Sir, he said to the chief, the leak didn't come from inside our system. It came from outside. The source was Serena's PR assistant. She was sending snippets of recordings to media houses for months. The chief's brow furrowed. Months? Then the betrayal started long before the test. Jamal nodded. Yes, sir. I also found messages between her and Keisha. It seems Keisha didn't plan to expose her at first. She was pressured. Serena promised to ruin her career if she backed out. So the truth forced itself out, the chief murmured. Even lies get tired. By morning the mansion had become a fortress. Paparazzi camped outside the gates. Drones hovered overhead, catching glimpses of the garden where it all began. Malik walked out to the veranda with heavy steps. His father sat there reading a newspaper filled with his own story. The headline above the fold read, A lesson too far? Chief Johnson's morality play sparks outrage. Dad, Malik began quietly, they're calling you a tyrant. The chief folded the paper neatly. They called prophets madmen too. Malik sighed. But your name, your company, our reputation, it's all on fire. My son, the chief said softly, reputation is what people think of you. Character is what God knows of you. One can be rebuilt. The other cannot. Malik sat beside him, frustration carving his face. You should have told me. I could have handled it differently. Instead, we're the villains of our own story. The chief looked at him with calm eyes. I didn't test you, Malik. I tested her. But the result has shown me something about both of you. Malik frowned. What do you mean? The chief took a slow sip of tea before speaking. You loved her, but you ignored signs. When a man loves blindly, he risks walking into fire thinking it's warmth. You inherited my success, Malik, but you must also inherit my wisdom. If not, the riches will burn your heart. The words stung because they were true. Malik leaned forward, elbows on his knees. So what do I do now? Do nothing rash, the chief said. Let time speak. Time tells truth better than any headline. But Serena wasn't waiting for time. That afternoon she appeared on live television. Perfect makeup, tears glistening like diamonds under the studio lights. I was humiliated, she told the host. Imagine planning a wedding, believing you're marrying into love, only to find out your fiancé's father was spying on you disguised as a servant. They filmed me secretly. They laughed at me. Her voice cracked perfectly on cue. The host nodded sympathetically. That must have been traumatizing. Yes, Serena said, sniffing. And now they've released that video, edited to make me look cruel. I made mistakes, I admit. But who deserves to be tested like that? Within hours, public opinion began to shift. Sympathy posts flooded social media. That test was psychological abuse. She's right, he went too far. These rich families think they're above morals. Malik watched in silence. His chest tightened with anger, not just at her lies, but at how easily people believed them. She's playing victim, Jamal said, standing behind him. But we have evidence, dates, messages, voice notes. Malik shook his head. If we fight her with proof, it'll look like revenge. The internet doesn't care about truth, it cares about noise. The chief entered then, dressed in his usual white agbada, calm as ever. Let her speak, he said. Lies are leaves, truth is the wind that will scatter them. But Dad, Malik protested, this could destroy everything you've built. The chief looked out the window where the gardeners, real ones, were tending the same hibiscus he had once trimmed in disguise. Everything I've built came from the soil. Soil is patient. It always finds its way back. That evening something unexpected happened. A video surfaced on TikTok, not from the family but from Maya, the quiet housekeeper. She had posted a simple message speaking directly to the camera. My name is Maya. I've worked for Chief Johnson for 10 years. The man you saw pretending to be a gardener is not cruel. He was kind enough to give people like me a home. The woman he tested, she treated us like dirt. That's not a test, it's truth showing itself. Her voice was steady, her eyes sincere. Within hours, her video went viral. Millions of comments poured in. Now this is the real story. Respect to the chief and his staff. I believe her, look at her face, she's telling the truth. The tide began to turn again. News outlets started questioning Serena's narrative. The same morning shows that had called the chief heartless were now replaying Maya's clip. Kojo and Aaliyah were interviewed too, each confirming the same story. They didn't insult Serena, they just told what happened. Their calm honesty melted through the noise. By midnight, Serena's interview began to crumble under public scrutiny. People found contradictions in her timeline, screenshots proving she'd been in contact with gossip sites even before the wedding. Her comment sections filled with backlash. Sponsors who had offered her deals quietly withdrew. In the Johnson estate, peace began to settle slowly. The chief gathered his staff in the courtyard. You have done what even I could not, he said, his deep voice trembling with pride. You have reminded the world that dignity does not wear a price tag. Kojo smiled broadly. We only said the truth, sir. Aaliyah added softly, the truth always tastes sweet after a bitter day. Malik looked at each of them, realizing that the people he once took for granted had become the pillars of his home. From now on, he said, this house is yours as much as it is ours. They cheered quietly and for the first time in days, laughter returned to the air. The chief put a hand on his son's shoulder. The storm has passed, but remember, storms always leave a message. Malik nodded. That love isn't proven by wealth, but by heart. The chief smiled faintly. Exactly. And maybe someday you'll find someone whose heart doesn't need a test. But before they could step inside, Jamal's phone buzzed again. He frowned. Sir, you need to see this. He turned the screen toward them. A new post had just gone viral. The caption read, Serena Price exposes Johnson family's darkest secret. Proof that the gardener wasn't the only one pretending. The thumbnail showed a blurred photo of Malik and the chief shaking hands with a man none of them recognized, yet the background looked alarmingly familiar. The chief narrowed his eyes. What game is she playing now? Jamal zoomed in on the photo. That's not old, he said quietly. That was taken 2 days ago, here. The chief's calm expression shifted for the first time. 2 days ago? Then who was this man with us? Kojo's voice lowered. Sir, I think the test is not over. The chief turned toward the window. Outside, a lone figure stood by the gate, half hidden by the shadows, watching. And just like that, the peace they had fought to reclaim began to tremble again. Rain began to fall softly over the estate, the kind that barely touched the ground before turning to mist. The figure by the gate did not move. From the veranda, Chief Adewale watched through the haze, his eyes narrowing slightly. Malik stepped beside him, gripping the rail. Who is that, Dad? Security? Jamal shook his head. No, that's not one of ours. He zoomed in on his phone camera. The face was partly hidden by a cap, but the man's stance was familiar, tall, broad-shouldered, the posture of someone who had once belonged here. Kojo squinted. Wait, that looks like... He stopped short. No, it can't be. The chief's gaze stayed locked. Speak, Kojo. Kojo hesitated. Sir, that looks like Mr. Collins. The former financial advisor. Malik turned quickly. The one who disappeared after the audit scandal? Yes, Kojo said slowly. He was accused of embezzling company funds 5 years ago. Everyone thought he fled abroad. The chief's jaw tightened. Apparently he didn't. Jamal's phone buzzed again. Sir, it's trending. The photo Serena posted, it's him. Collins. But she's claiming he met with you secretly 2 days ago. She says you paid him to create false evidence against her. Malik's voice rose. What? That's ridiculous. Not to the public, Jamal said grimly. They're eating it up. ## Johnson conspiracy is #1 on X. The chief exhaled, steady but slow. This woman has found the serpent to her whisper. Collins was always a viper. I should have known he would return for venom. By the next morning, chaos was back in full swing. News stations replayed Serena's new accusations on loop. Sources confirmed, the anchors said, that Chief Johnson met with disgraced financial advisor Collins for unknown reasons days before the cancelled wedding. Online, theories grew faster than truth. Some said the chief had hired Collins to hack Serena's private messages. Others claimed he'd paid the staff to act mistreated. The internet had no need for evidence, it only needed excitement. Inside the Johnson mansion, the atmosphere was thick. Aaliyah and Maya kept glancing at the windows as if expecting another camera drone. Kojo patrolled the grounds, his usually calm face drawn tight. Malik sat at the dining table, scrolling through endless comments. Dad, people think we faked the whole thing just to humiliate Serena. The chief nodded slowly. I see. What do you mean you see? Malik snapped. Aren't you angry? This man Collins, he's lying. Serena's destroying everything we built. The chief looked at his son's clenched fists and said quietly, Anger is a poor farmer, Malik. It plants seeds that grow only weeds. We will answer with facts, not fury. Jamal entered with a tablet and several printed documents. Sir, I dug deeper into the footage from the estate cameras. Collins was here 2 days ago. He came in through the service gate. Someone authorized it. Who? Malik asked sharply. Jamal hesitated. According to the access log, it was Maya's code. The room went still. Maya froze at the doorway, her hands trembling around a tray of tea. Sir, no. I didn't let anyone in. I swear on my mother's grave. Kojo frowned deeply. Maya doesn't even use her code most times. I always open the gate for her. The chief raised a calming hand. We will not accuse before we listen. Maya, think carefully. Did you lend your card to anyone? She shook her head, eyes wide with fear. Never, sir. But 2 days ago when I went to buy cleaning supplies, my purse went missing for about an hour. I thought I misplaced it. Malik's brow furrowed. Then someone cloned her card. Jamal nodded. Exactly. Collins has friends in cybercrime. He must have gotten a duplicate. He planned this perfectly. The chief sighed, rubbing his temple. So we are facing a serpent with 2 heads, Serena's lies and Collins's revenge. Aaliyah crossed her arms tightly. Sir, what will you do? Fight truth with truth, the chief said simply. That afternoon he called a press conference at the estate. Cameras lined the driveway again, but this time the chief was ready. He stepped up to the podium in a navy agbada, his calm presence silencing even the most eager reporters. Malik stood beside him, flanked by Jamal and Kojo. Good afternoon, the chief began. I see many familiar faces, some from when you praised my company and others from when you condemned my home. Today, I ask you to listen before you judge. He paused, letting the murmurs die. 5 years ago, I dismissed a man named Collins for theft and betrayal. Yesterday, that same man appeared at my gate, working with a woman who once claimed to love my son. They seek not justice but attention. They want a stage, not truth. He lifted a small folder. This is my security log. It shows Collins entering illegally with a cloned access card. This is my accounting record, proving he stole from me long before he met my family again. And this, he held up a flash drive, is footage from our security system showing exactly how he came in. Jamal plugged the drive into the screen beside the podium. The footage rolled. Collins entering at night, his cap low, swiping a card that matched Maya's code. He looked around, checking the camera once, then smirked. The reporters gasped. One shouted, Chief Johnson, why didn't you call the police? I did, the chief said, nodding to 2 uniformed officers who stepped forward. He is in custody now. And soon, the rest of the truth will follow. He turned toward the cameras. To the public, judge me as you wish. But remember, no one should be condemned by half a story. The press murmured furiously, the air thick with renewed confusion. Malik watched his father speak with the quiet strength of a man who had learned to be unshaken by storms. When the conference ended, Jamal leaned close. "Sir, Collins is talking. He said he wasn't acting alone." The chief's eyes narrowed. Of course he wasn't. A snake never crawls without a trail. That night, thunder broke again. Malik stood in his room replaying everything. Betrayal, lies, the media circus. It all swirled inside his head like smoke. He opened his phone and scrolled through the latest comments. Some people were apologizing to the chief, others still spreading rumors. A new video appeared titled Serena and Collins, The Real Master Plan. Malik tapped play. It was footage from an airport cafe, a hidden camera clip showing Serena and Collins meeting 3 weeks before the wedding. They were laughing, plotting, their voices faint but clear. "Once the wedding goes viral," Collins said, "we'll leak the Gardner story. The sympathy will make you famous. Sponsors will pay millions." Serena smiled. "And the old man will never know what hit him." The video ended. Malik's hands shook. "Dad," he shouted, racing downstairs. The chief met him halfway, Jamal already holding his phone. "I've seen it," the chief said calmly. "The truth has spoken." Kojo's laughter echoed from the kitchen. "Ah, God doesn't sleep." Aaliyah wiped her eyes, smiling through tears. The truth took its time, but it arrived on royal horses. Malik looked at his father. "What happens now?" The chief placed a hand on his shoulder. "Now we forgive. But we never forget." The next morning, Serena's empire crumbled faster than it had risen. Brands dropped her social media pages overflowed with backlash, and Collins faced arrest for fraud and extortion. The world finally understood what the chief had been trying to prove all along, that wealth and charm can hide rot, and humility is not weakness. For the first time in days, sunlight returned to the estate. The hibiscus flowers glistened under the morning dew, red as victory. Malik stood beside his father, watching the staff go about their work with smiles again. "Dad," he said softly, "you were right. The test wasn't cruel, it was necessary." The chief chuckled. "A wise man once said, when you wash your hands clean, you can eat with kings. We only asked her to wash her heart." Malik smiled faintly, feeling the weight lift from his shoulders. Just then Jamal's phone buzzed again. He frowned. "Sir, there's something else." The chief sighed. "Another scandal?" "No," Jamal said slowly. "This one's different. It's about your late wife." The chief froze. "What about her?" Jamal hesitated, eyes darting between father and son. "There's a document that surfaced online, apparently signed by her, stating that part of your estate belongs to someone else." The chief's face turned pale. "Someone else? Who?" Jamal swallowed. "A woman named Evelyn Collins." The chief's cup slipped from his hand, shattering on the floor. Malik's heart skipped. "Collins's wife?" The chief's voice dropped hollow. "No. Collins's sister." And just like that, the room fell silent again. The storm that had just passed had left another brewing behind it. The room went completely still. The shattered porcelain teacup lay in pieces on the marble floor, steam rising from the spilled zobo like ghostly threads. The chief's hand trembled slightly as he gripped the edge of the dining table. "Repeat that name," he said slowly, his voice low but sharp as a blade. Jamal cleared his throat. "Evelyn Collins, sir. The document claims she is legally entitled to 10% of the Johnson estate. Signed by your late wife, Madame Tola Johnson." A sound escaped Malik, half disbelief, half outrage. "That's impossible. Mom would never sign something like that. She was meticulous about her paperwork." Kojo crossed himself under his breath. "Sir, this Collins family, are they witches? They keep reappearing like bad omens." The chief sank into his chair, his face unreadable. "Jamal, where did this document come from?" "It was posted online last night by an anonymous account. But the metadata traces back to the same laptop we found in Collins's possession," Jamal explained. "However," he hesitated. "However what?" the chief demanded. "The signature looks authentic," Jamal said quietly. "I've compared it to Madame Tola's previous legal papers. It matches perfectly." The chief's chest rose and fell. His wife's handwriting, elegant, looping, always steady, flashed in his memory. "That woman," he whispered. "Evelyn. It can't be coincidence. Collins's sister. Tola never mentioned her." Malik sat down opposite him, his heart pounding. "Dad, could Mom have known her somehow? Before she passed?" The chief shook his head slowly. "Your mother kept no secrets from me. At least, I believed so. A heavy silence filled the room. Even the rain outside seemed to pause. Later that day, Jamal brought the printed document into the study. Malik hovered behind his father as they examined it under the lamp. The paper bore the official Johnson Foundation letterhead, exactly like those used for Tola's charitable projects before her passing. The words were clean and deliberate. I, Tola Johnson, in full clarity of mind and heart, hereby bequeath 10% of my estate and investments to Evelyn Collins, as gratitude for a debt she once helped me repay. It was signed and dated the year before her death. Malik rubbed his temples. Dad, this doesn't make sense. Who is Evelyn Collins? What debt? The chief's voice hardened. I will find out. By evening, the chief and Jamal traced Evelyn's address to a quiet neighborhood in Ikeja, Lagos. Jamal arranged a video call with her through legal contacts. When the camera flickered to life, a woman appeared, mid-50s, dark-skinned, with a calm but tired face. Mrs. Collins? The chief began. Her eyes flicked up, recognizing him instantly. Chief Johnson, she said softly. It's been a long time. He frowned. You know me? I should, she replied. You may not remember, but your late wife and I were very close, once. Malik leaned forward, startled. You knew my mother? Evelyn smiled faintly, sadness in her eyes. Yes. We met 30 years ago at the University of Lagos. I was her roommate in the old Queen Amina hostel. Back then I was Evelyn Adeyemi. Collins is my married name. The chief blinked slowly, memories struggling to surface. I didn't know she had a roommate named Evelyn. She probably didn't tell you everything, Evelyn said softly. When Tola fell pregnant with you, she faced difficult times. Her father didn't approve of your relationship. He cut her off financially. I lent her money for tuition, rent, and medical bills. She promised she'd repay me when she could. But after you two married and wealth came, she tried to repay it, many times. I refused. We drifted apart. Then, a few years before her death, she called me. She said she wanted to do something proper, to thank me. Malik swallowed hard. You mean this document? Yes, Evelyn said. She insisted I accept it. I never wanted it to go public. I didn't leak it. The chief studied her face. Her tone carried no arrogance, only sorrow. Then who did? Evelyn hesitated. My younger brother, Collins. He always resented you. He thought you destroyed my chances when Tola married into wealth and left our circle behind. He believed the Johnsons took what wasn't theirs. So he used you, the chief said grimly. Used your name to attack my family. Evelyn nodded slowly. He stole copies of my old documents years ago. That must be how he forged access. Malik exhaled. So this whole thing, every scandal, was his revenge for a 30-year-old grudge? Evelyn's voice trembled. I'm so sorry, Chief. I didn't know it would come to this. The chief's face softened. It's not your fault, my dear. A brother's sin should not rest on his sister's shoulders. Before ending the call, Evelyn added quietly, Tola always loved you deeply. She never spoke of regret, only gratitude. Remember that. The screen went black. For a long time, neither father nor son spoke. Finally, Malik whispered, Mom was repaying kindness. Collins twisted it into a weapon. The chief leaned back in his chair. And because of that, the world nearly destroyed her memory. That night, the chief went out to the garden, the same one where the deception had begun. The air smelled of wet earth and hibiscus. He knelt beside the trimmed bushes, his voice low. Tola, my love. I tested another woman's heart, but now I see I still needed to test my own. The wind rustled gently through the leaves, almost as if answering him. Behind him, Malik approached quietly. Dad, he said softly, maybe this was never just about Serena. Maybe the real lesson was about grace. The chief smiled faintly. Grace, yes. The kind your mother lived by. Malik sighed, looking at the stars above. What will you do now? Clear her name, the chief said firmly. And forgive those who tried to bury ours. The next morning, the chief called a second press conference, not to defend himself this time, but to honor the truth. Cameras flashed again, but this time, there was no fear in his posture. Yesterday, he began, I learned that the late Tola Johnson, my beloved wife, once made a promise to a dear friend named Evelyn Collins, a woman who helped her in her youth. My wife honored that debt out of gratitude. Unfortunately, her act of kindness was twisted by those driven by envy. He paused, looking straight into the cameras. This is not a story of revenge anymore. It is a story of forgiveness. My wife's heart was big enough to thank someone who once lifted her. Mine will be big enough to forgive the ones who tried to pull us down. The crowd fell silent. For the first time since the scandal began, applause broke out, not of mockery but respect. That night the internet overflowed again, but this time with praise. Hashtags changed. Hashtag the real Johnson legacy. Hashtag Grace wins. Hashtag Tola lives on. The story that once threatened to destroy them had become a lesson for millions. Later that evening, the chief gathered his staff around the dining hall once more. The tension that once clouded the house was gone. In its place was calm. "My children," he said warmly, "you have stood through storms and shame, and still you stood straight. From today no one in this home is called staff. You are family." Cheers filled the room. Aaliyah clapped her hands, Maya wiped her eyes, and Kojo grinned like a proud brother. Malik looked around, smiling. "We lost our peace, but we found our purpose." The chief nodded slowly. "True wealth," he said, "is not gold or property. It is peace that no rumor can steal." Just then Jamal entered holding a small envelope. "Sir, one last thing came in the mail. No sender's name." The chief opened it. Inside was a photograph, old, faded, with 3 people standing arm in arm: Tola, Evelyn, and Collins. On the back of the photo were words in Tola's handwriting. "Forgive him. He's lost, not evil." The chief's eyes glistened. He passed it to Malik. "Your mother's voice never stopped speaking," he said quietly. Malik nodded. "Then we'll listen this time." They both smiled, soft, tired, but free. Outside the rain stopped. The garden shimmered again, peaceful and green. And for the first time in months the Johnson estate truly felt like home. For a few weeks, calm finally returned to the Johnson estate. The morning sun filtered gently through the glass pavilion that once held chaos, now silent except for the chirping of birds. The world had moved on from the scandal, and the Johnson name had been restored, not through wealth but through truth. Yet deep down Malik felt a quiet restlessness. Even though Serena and Collins were exposed and his mother's memory cleared, a hollow space lingered in his chest. The wedding that never happened had left scars he didn't know how to name. One afternoon he walked through the garden where his father had once disguised himself as a gardener. The hibiscus bloomed brighter than ever, as though nourished by the tears that had fallen into its soil. He bent to touch one of the petals, then heard footsteps behind him. "Thinking again?" His father's calm voice came. Malik smiled faintly. "Always." Chief Adewale joined him on the path. "Peace is not the absence of noise," he said. "It's learning to walk calmly through it." Malik sighed. "I've been thinking about Serena. Not because I miss her, but because I can't understand how someone could fake love that perfectly." The chief folded his hands behind him. "My son, when people love what you have more than who you are, they act like mirrors. They reflect your shine, but they bring no light of their own." Malik looked down. "I keep wondering if there was something I did wrong. Maybe if I'd seen it earlier." "No," the chief interrupted gently. "You were supposed to learn. Some lessons are too expensive to buy with money. They must be paid for with pain." Malik nodded slowly. "I guess pain was the tuition." The chief smiled. "And wisdom is the certificate." They both laughed quietly. The following week, a letter arrived at the gate. No address, no name, just the words, "For Chief Adewale." Kojo handed it to him with raised brows. "Sir, I don't like the look of this envelope. Smells like trouble." The chief opened it carefully. Inside was a short handwritten note. "You destroyed my family's name. You may have cleared your wife's memory, but I'll make sure your son pays for your pride. See." The chief's expression hardened. "Collins." Jamal, who had just entered the room, read it over his shoulder. "Sir, he's still in custody awaiting trial. He can't have written this himself." "Then he still has allies," the chief murmured. "Snakes always travel in pairs." Malik entered, noticing their tense expressions. "What's going on?" His father handed him the note. Malik read it twice, then looked up. "He's threatening me?" "Yes," the chief said. "But don't let fear cloud your days. Fear gives power to the powerless." Still, Jamal wasn't convinced. "Sir, with your permission, I'll increase security. Collins has friends in dark places." The chief nodded. "Do what you must. But I will not let fear live here." 2 days later, Malik drove into the city to meet with potential investors for his new tech foundation. The meeting was smooth, hopeful, until he returned to his car and found the driver's side window cracked. Inside, on the seat, sat a single envelope. He froze. He opened it slowly. Inside was a photograph of himself standing in the garden that morning, with a red X drawn across his chest. The note beneath it read, "The sins of the father fall upon the son." Malik's pulse quickened. He scanned the parking lot but no one seemed to be watching. He quickly started the car and sped home. When he arrived, Jamal was already waiting as if expecting him. "Sir, I was tracking your GPS when I saw the alert. You're not safe in public without backup anymore." Malik exhaled shakily. "Dad, this isn't just threats. He's planning something." The chief took the photo, studying it carefully. "Ink and fear," he said calmly. "Both can stain but neither can kill unless you let them." "Dad." Malik snapped. "This isn't one of your proverbs. He's serious." The chief looked at him for a long moment, then nodded. "I know. That's why I've already set a trap." That night, under a waning moon, the estate was quiet, too quiet. The staff were asleep, the lights dimmed, and Jamal and his men patrolled discreetly around the perimeter. At exactly 1 a.m., motion sensors triggered near the back gate. Jamal and Kojo, hiding behind the palm grove, exchanged glances. "Ready?" Jamal whispered. Kojo nodded, gripping his flashlight tight. A shadow moved near the hibiscus line, the same place where the first confrontation with Serena had happened. A tall figure slipped through the gate, dressed in black, hooded, moving fast. He crept toward the veranda, unaware that every movement was being watched through infrared cameras. When he reached the steps, he stopped and raised a small bottle, gasoline. He began pouring it across the wooden floorboards. Kojo's whisper trembled. "He's trying to burn the house." "Not yet," Jamal said steady. "Wait for the signal." The man struck a match, but before the flame could fall, a spotlight exploded to life. Sirens wailed. "Drop it!" Jamal shouted, stepping forward, gun drawn. "Security! Hands up!" The figure froze, then turned sharply, revealing a scarred face under the hood. It was not Collins. It was another man, thinner, younger, but with the same eyes. "Who sent you?" Jamal barked. The man glared. "You know who." Chief Adewale appeared on the veranda, calm in his robe. "Collins couldn't come himself, so he sent his shadow." The intruder sneered. "He says you took everything from him. His sister. His name. His future." The chief's gaze was unshaken. "I took nothing. He lost everything by holding on to hatred." The man spat at the ground. "He said your son will learn the same pain." Jamal signaled and 2 guards closed in, handcuffing the intruder. He struggled but couldn't break free. Malik stepped forward, his voice trembling. "Why target me? I didn't even know your brother existed." The man smirked darkly. "Because you're his reflection. The son of the man who played God." "Enough," the chief said quietly. "Take him away." As the guards led the man off the property, the chief stood in silence. The smell of gasoline lingered faintly in the air, mixing with the night rain. Malik turned to him. "Dad, it's never going to end, is it?" The chief's face softened. "Evil never ends, my son. But neither does good. We simply have to keep choosing which one we'll feed." He put a hand on Malik's shoulder. "We've fought this battle with truth. Now we'll end it with peace." The next day, the police confirmed that the intruder was Collins's cousin, bribed to destroy the Johnson home in revenge. With the arrest, new evidence surfaced linking Collins to a network of scams. He had orchestrated everything from prison, hoping to ruin the chief's name before his sentencing. The media went wild again, but this time the public didn't fall for the spectacle. They had learned the truth once and for all. For the first time, Chief Adewale's story wasn't told by gossip bloggers, it was told by those who had lived it. Kojo, Aaliyah, Maya, and Jamal each spoke in interviews about loyalty, humility, and the danger of judging a person by their wealth. The Johnson family became a symbol of wisdom. The same people who had mocked the Gardner test now quoted it as a parable about integrity. Even Malik, once hesitant about public attention, was invited to speak at universities about leadership and moral discernment. His new foundation, Hearts Before Gold, launched with overwhelming support. But despite the praise, one truth stayed steady: the lesson had been learned through pain, not pride. One evening, Malik stood again by the garden's edge, watching the fireflies rise. His father joined him quietly, holding a small box. "What's that?" Malik asked. The chief smiled. "Your mother's last keepsake. I think it's time you have it." He opened the box. Inside was a folded letter, yellowed with age. Malik unfolded it carefully and read, "My dearest Adewale, if you ever find this, know that the world will always test the heart disguised as fate. When that day comes, don't fight it with anger, fight it with grace. And if our son ever forgets what love truly is, remind him that love is not found in palaces, but proven in the smallest hands that serve." Tola. Malik swallowed hard, tears filling his eyes. She knew, he whispered. Yes, the chief said softly. Your mother always saw further than any of us. They stood there in silence, the night gentle around them. Dad, Malik said after a long pause, thank you for everything. Even the pain. The chief smiled. Then you've learned the final lesson. Malik turned to him. Which is? That peace is not given, the chief said quietly. It is chosen again and again. But far away in a cold cell, Colin stared at a flickering television showing the Johnson family's televised charity event. His face twisted, not with hatred this time but regret. He whispered, maybe she was right. Maybe they were all right. Then he lowered his head into his hands. Outside, dawn was breaking. The world was moving on. The morning sun rose gently over the Johnson estate, golden light spilling through the wide veranda and settling on the polished marble floors. For the first time in many months, peace truly lived there, not the fragile silence that follows tragedy, but the quiet confidence that comes after victory. Birds sang in the hibiscus trees, the same trees that had once witnessed humiliation, deceit, and redemption. The scent of Aaliyah's cooking drifted from the kitchen, fried plantain and pepper stew, while Maya hummed as she arranged fresh flowers in the foyer. Malik stepped outside in a crisp white shirt, looking across the garden that had changed the course of their lives. The fountain glimmered, reflecting the sunlight like diamonds. Every detail of the house, the paths, the windows, even the gate, seemed to breathe differently now. Chief Adewale was already sitting beneath the shade of a palm tree, dressed in his simple native attire, reading a newspaper. He looked up and smiled. You're early today. Malik smiled back. I couldn't sleep. I kept thinking about how far we've come. The chief folded his paper, eyes thoughtful. Yes. It feels like we have lived 10 years in one. Malik sat beside him. You were right, Dad. Every storm hides a seed of wisdom. I just didn't know it would take this much pain to find it. The chief chuckled softly. Pain is like fire, it burns but it also refines. You are stronger now, Malik. Wiser. And kinder. Malik's eyes softened. I learned from the best. They sat in silence for a moment, the wind brushing gently through the palms. Then Malik spoke again. Dad, do you ever think about Mom? The chief's gaze drifted toward the horizon. Every day. She was the heartbeat of this home. Even in death, she's still teaching us. He pointed toward the hibiscus garden. Do you see that soil, Malik? That's where her favorite flowers grow. I used to wonder why they survived every season, even the harshest harmattan. Now I know. She planted them herself with love. And love, my son, never dies. Malik nodded slowly, emotion tightening his throat. Around noon, the staff gathered in the courtyard for a small ceremony. The chief had called everyone together, not to discuss business but to celebrate family. A long wooden table was laid out with jollof rice, fried fish, puff-puff, and drinks that sparkled in the sunlight. Kojo stood proudly by the gate in a neatly pressed white shirt. I never thought I'd see this house quiet again, he said laughing. Aaliyah grinned. Quiet? Not with me cooking. I plan to make enough noise with this stew for the next 5 hours. Maya clapped her hands together. Let's give thanks. For truth, for peace, and for this family. The chief raised his glass. To everyone here, thank you. You stood firm when the world turned against us. You are more than workers, you are pillars of this home. He looked around the table, eyes warm. There's an old Yoruba saying, by Omode Bie Subu, Awoi Waju, by Agbalagba Bie Subu, Awoi Hin. When a child falls he looks ahead, when an elder falls he looks back. We have fallen and risen, and both the past and the future have taught us well. The crowd cheered. Malik laughed, feeling lighter than he had in months. He looked at the faces around him, their smiles, their shared strength, and realized something powerful. Family was not defined by blood alone but by loyalty and love. Then his father stood, clearing his throat. Before we eat, the chief said, I have one last announcement. The courtyard quieted. He looked directly at Malik. My son, the time has come for you to take full leadership of the Johnson Foundation. You've proven not only your skill but your heart. This house and this legacy, both are now in your hands. Malik's eyes widened. Dad, are you sure? The chief smiled gently. I have never been more sure of anything. I built wealth but you have built purpose. That is the true inheritance. Applause broke out and Malik stood, visibly moved. Thank you, Dad. I promise I'll honor everything you and Mom built. The chief nodded proudly. Then go, my son. Build bridges where others build walls. Later that evening, Malik drove into the city to visit the youth center his father had founded years ago. It had been recently renovated and renamed the Adewale Johnson Center for Moral Leadership. Children played in the courtyard, their laughter echoing against the bright murals painted on the walls, scenes of community, kindness, and courage. One of the staff members greeted him with a wide smile. "Mr. Malik, you're here just in time. The new students are about to begin orientation." He stepped inside and saw a group of teenagers seated in rows. At the front of the room, a banner read, "Integrity is the seed of greatness." Malik smiled. "That's one of Dad's quotes." The teacher turned to him. "Would you like to say a few words, sir?" He hesitated, then walked to the podium. The room fell silent. "Some of you know my name," he began. "But what matters more is the story behind it. My family was tested in ways we never imagined. People lied about us. We lost friends, faith, and peace. But we also found something stronger: truth." He looked around at the young faces watching him intently. "If you take anything from my story, let it be this: never judge someone by what they have. Judge them by what they give when no one is watching." The crowd applauded softly. Malik smiled, stepping away from the podium. He felt his mother's presence there, in the warmth of the room, in the faces of the children whose lives she had once dreamed of changing. That night, he returned home to find his father sitting quietly on the veranda, a lantern glowing beside him. "You made me proud today," the chief said without looking up. Malik smiled. "You saw the speech?" "Of course. Your words carried her spirit." They sat together under the stars. The garden rustled softly, the air filled with the scent of hibiscus and peace. Malik leaned back in his chair. "You know, Dad, when you pretended to be a gardener, I thought you were being old-fashioned. Now I understand. You weren't testing Serena, you were teaching me." The chief turned, a knowing smile on his face. "Exactly. The true heir of a kingdom must first learn to serve." Malik chuckled. "Then maybe I should try gardening for real." "You should," the chief replied with a wink. "The soil has more to teach than any classroom." They laughed together, their bond stronger than ever. Weeks later, as the sun set over the estate, the family gathered once more: staff, friends, neighbors, all dressed in bright Ankara fabrics. Music played, children danced, and the air was filled with joy. Aaliyah raised her voice above the laughter. "From today, no more secrets, no more tests. This house is for truth." Kojo lifted his drink. "And for jollof rice." The crowd erupted in laughter. Chief Adewale smiled, watching the people he loved, the family he had built, not by blood but by loyalty. He whispered to himself, "Tola, my love, the garden is blooming again." He turned to Malik. "Promise me something." "Anything, Dad." "When your time comes to test love, do it not with disguise, but with discernment. And never forget, true love is seen, not performed." Malik nodded. "I promise." They clinked their glasses together, the sound echoing softly through the night. As the stars blinked above the quiet garden, one last petal from the hibiscus tree drifted down, landing gently at the chief's feet. He picked it up and smiled. The storm had passed. The soil had healed. And in that moment, the Johnson legacy, built not on money but on mercy, was finally complete. Speech balloon audience engagement prompts. What did you learn from this story? Do you think Chief Adewale's Gardner test was the right way to reveal true character, or was it too risky? Comment your thoughts below. I'd love to hear your perspective. Backhand index pointing right. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and share this story with your friends who love meaningful African folktales. And tell us, where are you watching from?